Hello, and welcome to We the People Taking Back Our Power. I'm Yasmin Attar, and this is my YouTube channel, Dr. Attari. I'm at home keeping myself sequestered for the coronavirus pandemic. I hope you're all doing well as can be expected under the circumstances. Today's topic is Don't Lose Hope for the Future. I'm addressing primarily the election, but I believe there are lessons here for the pandemic as well. After the Super Tuesday votes on March 3 and 10 and also 17, I was finding it hard not to lose hope. The youth revolution I was hoping for just didn't happen. In fact, the under age 30 voters seemed to turn out in smaller proportions than 2016. Granted, this is a primary election, but by all accounts, things were looking well for the progressives. National and California polling was showing that Bernie Sanders was leading Biden. I couldn't understand why Elizabeth Warren was so far behind, but sexism seemed to me to be the big culprit. I think it will be borne out in the final analysis. So what happened? As you can see by the line graph from the census, young voters usually have the lowest turnout. I know the graph is not sharp, but the bottom line, the yellow mustard color, is the 18 to 29-year-olds. Indications were there would be a big turnout this primary, so the optimism for a high youth turnout was high. I was going to show you a video of Bernie predicting the historic youth vote, but I just didn't have time. This next graph shows that that optimism was not borne out. As usual, older voters made up the majority. It turns out the majority of black voters in North and South Carolina preferred Biden. Same thing in Virginia. Look at these charts from the NBC exit polls. A majority of the voters were older, conservatives, and moderates. So without the younger voters, the tide wasn't going to shift. I don't know about you, but watching the sea of young people on the climate strikes globally and the Sunrise Movement members camping out in front of Nancy Pelosi's and Dianne Feinstein's Senate offices gave me hope. What happened to the revolution? Let's try to figure that out. Black voters wanted a return to the Obama-era policies. See the chart. The proportion of first-time voters whom you would expect to be younger declined compared to the 2016 election. Take a look at this chart. There were the late deciders. Many people were undecided, and when they did decide, the biggest group of them went for Biden. One of the reasons I believe this happened, I'm going to chalk up to the familiarity principle. The familiarity principle, or mere exposure effect, means that we are attracted to what is familiar to us. What is familiar is perceived as less threatening, so we conclude it may be a safer choice. We've already seen the information that backs up this notion. Take two on black voters preferring a return to Obama's policies. Look back at the other slides as well about the older voters and the moderates and so on. So how does the familiarity principle play out? Let me use these illustrations to show you. We've been on a sinking ship for years, probably decades. It's become the new normal. It's familiar. By sinking ship, I mean the decline of the middle class, increase in poverty class, and a disproportionate share of the wealth going to the upper class. Related to that is the decline of unions and resulting flat wages for the last 20 plus years. money having an increased influence in Congress, and a greater divide between the wealthy and non-wealthy. When we see a sinking ship with a moderate candidate on board, we head toward it rather than go toward the unfamiliar. We do what we're used to doing, staying away from what we're not used to doing. What happens when we continue to embrace the familiar? We get the same things. We get the status quo. See my video 3. Why do so many people wait to decide until the last minute, then go for the standard and usual candidate? We have higher agreement on maintaining the status quo than considering a new approach, for example, universal basic income. See my video 2. This can be what happens when we have agreement, also known as groupthink. So how do we maintain our faith and not lose hope for a progressive change in our future? Over the centuries, there have been many who fought tirelessly for human rights and dignity against all odds, often losing their lives in the process. Not everyone was popular, and not every hero was acknowledged. Not everyone intended to start a revolution or create a movement. For example, Nelson Mandela, Malala Yousafzai, Mahatma Gandhi, meet Geese. We can look to those who persevered despite horrible circumstances and odds. Senator John McCain, as a prisoner of war of the Vietnam War, is one example. In 1967, Navy Lieutenant Commander McCain's A-4 Skyhawk fighter jet was shot down over North Vietnam, and he was severely injured while ejecting. He was captured by the North Vietnamese, further injured, and held prisoner in the Hanoi Hilton, as the POW camp was called. I know there are disputes about McCain's time as a prisoner of war, but there are some lessons for us in his experience and how it made him the person he became, and what he contributed to our American identity as a lifelong advocate against the use of torture. During his more than 5 years as a North Vietnamese prisoner of war, John McCain may have broken under the duress of the horrible pain he was in as a result of his injuries and the regular beatings he got from his captors, in addition to spending 2 years in solitary confinement. But he was able to survive and recover and go on to have a 30-year career in the United States Congress. Here are some things he said that I really like. I had learned what we all learned over there. Every man has his breaking point. I had reached mine. He said 3 things kept him going: faith in God, faith in my fellow prisoners, and faith in my country. Over the years, McCain became a voice for understanding, of bipartisanship. I am weary of self-proclaimed patriots who criticize anyone who questions the United States' long-held policies. You know, the policies where a big corporation uses its money to influence what our government does, for example, in Central and South America, the Middle East. And then the corporate bigwigs make a ton of money in the process. You corporations know who you are, and I'm fairly certain you are not watching this video. I like what McCain said toward the end of his life that addresses this. We weaken our greatness when we confuse our patriotism with tribal rivalries that have sown resentment and hatred and violence in all corners of the globe. We weaken it when we hide behind walls rather than tear them down, when we doubt the power of our ideals rather than trust them to be the great force for change they have always been. Wise words we can use today. Ironically, one final beacon of hope is exit polls indicated 85% of Biden supporters said they would vote for Sanders if he became the nominee, and 83% of Sanders supporters said they would vote for Biden if he was the nominee, or any Democratic nominee for that matter. So amid the coronavirus pandemic, let's try to maintain our faith that we will pull through this and will work together to solve the problem as individuals, as countries, as a world. That's it for now. Today I talked about the results of the first round of the Democratic primary voting, why people may have voted the way they did, and how we can maintain our hope for the future. I hope you have taken some optimism from this information. Thank you for watching. Please click on the like, comment, and subscribe buttons if you enjoyed this video.